Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Cyndee Dhali. She's going to be talking about her life. You know, she's faced things like rejection, ostracization, illnesses, disownment, all that. And she's going to be talking about, how you can fully accept life and be what you're meant to be. So we're going to be talking to her about her story and everything that she's up to. So Cyndee, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Curtis.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
First, I live in a small country in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. And I had many roles in life. I was a child, I was a student, I was a teacher, I was a wife, I was a mother. I still am, but these are the roles I played. I was a patient, I was a counselor, I was a widow, and now I am a writer and a poet and a speaker.
Okay, well, just kind of run it. You were talking in your bio, about your life, how you face, different situations like rejection, illnesses, and stuff like that. Kind of tell the listeners about that.
Well, I think most of us growing up, we face a lot of difficulties and struggles and things that come up in life. And in my case is that I came from a really traditional religious background, and I didn't quite fit in with my way of thinking, with how I saw the world. So I got a lot of criticism and rejection. And then I decided to marry outside of my religion to somebody who I wanted to get married, and I was disowned and ostracized. And then, it was a struggle. My husband and I, we worked really hard together. We did things. And then I got ill. Well, my body got ill, actually. And I went through 4 years in a fog, not being able to walk. I was in a wheelchair for 11 years. Then I'm allergic to all medication, and I got a lot of illnesses affected my body. And I flatlined a few times and didn't expect me really to come back from what I went through, but I did. And then my husband died unexpectedly after a short illness on Christmas Eve, actually. And that was a surprise for everyone. And then he had to readjust to life. And then I had to struggle to try to be myself. And I didn't like being a burden to anybody because I've always been very independent and I find my way through everything. And then I asked God and I said, listen, I don't want to be in a wheelchair anymore because I don't want to be a burden to my children because they're fantastic children. But they have their own lives and they're both married. And I started trying to walk and I began to walk again. And now I can walk and I can do everything all by myself. And sometimes things in life hits you at different points. And you have to learn sometimes that what happens is not really meant to keep you down. It's meant to open your eyes so that you can see the wider picture of life. And everything I've been through and every struggle I've ever faced in life, I've learned that I got something from it. Yes, I got pain. Yes, I got anguish. Yes, I lost people. But at the same time, I also learned to see it as teaching me something and helping to build me into a better person and a stronger person and helping me see where I fall short also as a person.
Okay, well, with all that you went through, what did you do, or how did you deal with the grief and loss? Just kind of walk the listeners through that.
Okay, well, first of all, grief and loss is very personal to everybody. I can't tell you, okay, this is how it's going to be. You'll give you a set guideline of, well, you're going to face this first, and you're going to face that, and you're going to face the other, because it doesn't work like that. Grief is personal, it's messy, it's emotional, it affects all parts of you. And when I first suffered grief, when soon after, like, I got some feedback, which was not very nice, because somebody asked me, well, why didn't you die instead? Because, and my response was, I don't know. You're going to have to ask God about that, because I never asked him why I'm still here. And that was one part of it I had to deal with. And then, you try to come to terms with the fluctuation in emotions, because sometimes you think, okay, I'm doing okay, and I've been through things before, and I can step forward. And then everything keeps going in a spiral, and you get hit by a little thing. You might hear a song, you might live in the same place, and you look around and you see things, and everything reminds you of what you had or what is missing from your life right now. And remember, grief doesn't just come with losing, like somebody dying or passing away. Grief also comes with a separation, a divorce. Grief also comes with like loss of friendship. Even when you lose a job, you do suffer grief to a certain extent. You lose a pet. Even if you have to relocate from a place, you do suffer grief and loss, because you do feel the loss of what you're familiar with and what you knew in your life as a constant. And with the grief came a lot of turmoil and anguish. And you try to be there. Well, at least I try to be there for everybody. And, to be strong and supportive and manage what I had to manage, because you still have responsibilities. If you had like young children, you still have to look after them. You still have like to see if you're working, you still have to go to work, you still have to manage a lot of stuff. And it gets hard. And especially in nighttime when you're there and you're in the silence, that's when your mind tends to go down the spiral. And I thought I was managing, because given all the things that had happened in my life before, with the illness and ostracism and being criticized for being different and speaking my mind and having a different perspective of life, I thought I was managing. And then in October 2023, something happened, and I just felt myself spiraling, because I found that it was like I had just coped with the surface of it. And I needed to really look at myself and come to grips and come to agreement. While I accepted that this person was no longer there, I had to agree with myself that this loss was there and that this is how life is now. Because whereas before there were a we, a you, and a me, now there's just me. And I have to learn to create space around that grief and that loss that I was feeling, because you won't forget if something is missing from your life, or if someone dies. You can't forget it, because you have your memories that you carry inside of you. No matter what the memories were, you carry them inside of you, and they will crop up at all times. And so you have to learn to create space around it, in the sense that whilst you hold and you honor the memories of the person or what is absent in your life now, you have to learn to look and say, okay, I am still here. I don't know why I'm still here. And as the emotions come up, you have to learn to deal with them. And you have to give yourself space to breathe also, and say, okay, this is where I am. This is my reality. I can look around and I can see that this is where I am. Something is missing from my life. And I have to agree with it. And I have to realize that I still have to get up. I still have things to do. But it doesn't mean that I have to live in this prison of just feeling that loss.
Okay, well, I know that you've been on some pretty big shows, so spreading your message and helping people. So kind of talk to the listeners about that, so you're definitely, qualified to be speaking on this topic.
Yeah. Well, when you speak about loss, we think in terms of an absence. And it's very hard when you go through a loss to get your foundation back again, because this was something that you had was a constant in your life. So there are things that you can actually do. You can stop and listen. It's quite all right to cry. It's quite all right to lose it. It's quite all right to say, I don't want to do this. And when questions come up and say, why did this have to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to go through this. When is this ever going to stop? It's quite all right to feel those things because you formed an attachment and you had a connection to someone. And what we have to realize is that love is the strongest and bravest thing that you can do in your life. It is not jumping, doing 100-foot bungee jumping or jumping out of a plane. The bravest thing you can do is love someone because that is something you give as part of yourself. You are giving part of yourself to someone and you're taking someone as a part of you. And you understand because we are human that as you love, you can lose, whether it's through separation, whether it's through someone passing away. You understand that is a loss because life is uncertain and life is impermanence. And when you begin to understand that love is the bravest thing you can actually do, then you begin to see that you gave something. And it is okay to feel the absence of that something that you gave, but you still hold it inside of you. And very often we hear people talk about grief and they say, well, yes, you go and you do this, and counselors are good, and going to people and groups and things are very, very good. But when it comes down to it, dealing with what you feel, your loss, it is your loss to deal with. And sometimes people might find, well, after time passed, they will tell you, listen, I thought you were over that. You should have gotten past that stage. You should be moving on a bit. And you may feel guilty, so you keep it inside of you. But you have to acknowledge to yourself that what my connection was is different from what other people connection are. And when I speak, and you have to be clear to them that when I speak about someone, or if I remember, or if I bring up a memory, it's not that I am going through or spinning around or spiraling in the same circle. What I'm doing actually is honoring what I had with this person. So in a sense, when people do tell you that you should be past that, you should say, listen, as I respect your opinion, I respect mine also in the fact that these are my emotions. This is my connection to this person. And I want to honor what we had. I want to celebrate the memories that I had with this person. And I'm not spiraling, or I am not going into self-pity or wallowing. What I'm doing is I'm finding the joy in those memories. And that way you can bring yourself up. And sometimes just acknowledging that we had good times, and I went to this place, or if you go to a park, or if you see something on you say, oh, they love this movie, or they love this song. And you allow yourself to feel that joy. And a sense of peace will come eventually, because what you are doing is you're acknowledging what you had with that person. And you are giving them the honor that their presence had in your life. And at the same time, you are creating space. When I say create space, many people tell me they don't understand what I'm speaking about. But creating space means the loss remains in you, and it's in your memories, and it's in your emotions. Creating space means that you step out of where you are inside of you in your mind, and you begin to look at other things. Maybe you can start walking, do an activity. Maybe you can even start journaling. Maybe you can even start, going out to groups. Maybe you can even start a new hobby. Maybe there was something that you and the person or whoever it is missing, you wanted to do together or used to do together. you can restart that, and that way you can build new memories. You're not replacing the memories you have. What you're doing is you're expanding your reach, you're expanding yourself, you're opening yourself to more of what life has in it. Because remember, you are still here. And that is how I started writing, actually, because it got to the point where it was overwhelming and I always wrote in my mind, but I never actually sat down and started writing like poetry because I love poetry. I never actually started writing. And then when this came up, I just started writing. And this was like, it also is a form of catharsis for you when you start doing things, in that you treasure what you have, but you you allow yourself a chance to step out and to breathe and to see what else life has in store for you.
Speaking of writing, you wrote some books also. So, tell the listeners about your books, what they can expect when they read them and where they can get them from.
Um, well, the first book I wrote was a poetry book, because poetry is my kind of like the first thing that always is in my mind. It is called Pieces of Me Touch My Soul by Cyndee. It's available on Amazon. And the book about grief is called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. Run into the Fire, Discover Me in the Ashes by Faye Allian. I wrote that under a pseudonym, but it's also available on Amazon.com.
Well, talk to us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Um, Actually, I am working on a new book about What Now Life. That's the name of it. It's called What Now Life, and it talks about the fact that we go through all these struggles, and every time you kind of say, okay, what else is going to happen in my life? What else is going to happen? And it looks at how we can see advantages and our disadvantage, and how we can look through new eyes and see how life can be different. Because very often we get so drawn into what we grew up with or what is trending. And, we so want to fit in and be geared towards the current thing, because everything is moving so fast in life right now. And you get pulled into this way and that way. And no, you're not supposed to think this way, or that way is wrong, or that was the old way of thinking. And sometimes a lot of people get confused by all the information that is coming at them. Like meditate, use this program, do this course development, do this with regard to building yourself. And sometimes your brain gets so full of all the information you get, you wonder, what now? What should I try? What should I do? And it takes a very simple exercise like breathing, because we don't pay attention to how we breathe. And most of the things you find where you need to center yourself, or where you need to find your foundation, or to find your sense of contentment and your sense of peace, is by you breathe. And it's an unconscious act. But if you spend a few minutes just paying attention to how you breathe in and out, and focus on just the breathing, that helps a lot. Also, another way that you can help yourself is by writing. And I know a lot of people say, well, they don't like to write, or they don't know what to write. But you'd be surprised when you sit down, and it does take practice, and you start trying to say, okay, how am I feeling today? I don't mean this, okay, the same way I would ask you, Curtis, how are you feeling today? And you say, okay, I'm good, and that's it. But have you ever asked yourself, Curtis, how are you feeling today? What is going on with you inside? I don't mean your physical body or stuff like that. Ask as if you'll be the same concern as you would ask a friend or a loved one. And you'll be surprised, because when you connect to yourself and ask yourself in that way, okay, Cyndee, how are you feeling today? Oh, a bit nervous, I didn't feel up to doing anything. Why? I just felt this tiredness inside. And Okay, and then you can further ask yourself, where's this coming from and stuff like that. And when you begin to sit down and start writing, and you write to yourself, of yourself, and later when you read it back, you begin to pinpoint exactly, okay, this is how I was feeling, and this is where it came from. And maybe I just need to adjust, and maybe I just need to go outside and walk a bit more, or take better care of myself, or listen to something that I like, simple things like that.
Throw out your contact info so listeners can keep up with everything that you're up to, any websites or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, I do have a website for my book called fayalian.com.
Okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if that was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
You will get a lot of life experiences, and you will get a lot of opinions coming to you from everyone else. But what you have to realize is that there's only one you, and you alone can determine what your expectations and what your visions and what your hopes and how you want your life to be. Circumstances may be overwhelming, but they should never dictate the person you are, because you are always more, you are never less.
Right,
And
ladies and
that is
go.
my thought.
Yeah, you're always more, you are never less, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that as you go through the tough times in life. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Visit www.curveball337.com for more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. Cyndee, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Curtis.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.